So then, I appreciate everybody's time here today, and as such, I'm going to seek to maximize your time. I'm going to get right to it, if it's all right. I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to open up to Q&A. If for any reason there's a question you have that isn't answered, or perhaps you want to share a thought with me, I'm going to be sticking around. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback, and then see how I can help further. In terms of my goal today, I want you to understand the modern world of talent management, the labor market, the talent market. Specifically, what HR is doing and recruiters are doing inside today's talent market. And then last, I hope that when you leave here, you're going to have some fresh ideas about what it is that all of you can do to actually dial into the kind of company that not only you want to work for, but everything else that you want will come along with it. Fair enough? I have a couple of expectations that I want you to be aware of as I do this. First and foremost, I'm not going to have any PowerPoint slides. What I'm going to share with you today doesn't necessarily require any technology. It requires just human interaction, which is my way of saying that if you so choose, you can put your phones away. You simply won't need them today for the next hour. The second expectation I want to let you know is that I will offer you absolutely no original thought. Who here has ever heard of Joe Rogan? Anyone? So Joe Rogan is a comedian turned master podcaster. And when I heard him, and one time I heard him do, his podcast is like the #1 most downloaded podcast in America. I once heard him do stand-up, and he addressed the crowd saying that he's never the smart guy in the room. He basically goes into rooms, and because he thinks he's not the smart guy, he just listens to what everyone else is saying, and then when someone says something smart, he does that. And I heard that 20 years ago, and I thought it was probably one of the most profound things, so that's what I did. My way of what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm going to share with you what very, very smart people have shared with the world. And really what I'm going to do is sprinkle in my experiences and the observations I've had with that. And my third expectation, or the third thing you could expect, is that I'm here to educate you and to entertain you. I'm not here to sell you on a single thing. I feel compelled to tell you that because as of May 1st, I was no longer a professional salesperson. I spent my career selling software for some of the most progressive companies in the world, specifically HR and finance. So to Tom's point, I'm not exactly an HR guy, but I happen to know a whole lot about HR because of that. What I liked about working for these companies is that I got the opportunity over the last, let's call it since 2006, I got the opportunity to work with companies in every industry. They could have 50 employees, they could have 50,000 employees. And it was awesome because I got so many different perspectives. But the real cool part about working for these companies is that I got to learn a whole lot. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago where I started to learn really how to learn. You see, it was a little over 3 years ago where my wife moved out of the house. And I found myself, I found myself a divorced single father of 2, and my life was very much disrupted. And with that, I started to learn things that I had never learned before. And what I first started to learn, that my life absolutely impacts my work. And because I was disengaged, I wasn't doing very well. The truth is, I didn't want to travel. I had 2 boys, and I simply slipped in my sales. So I found myself in a very, very bad place, as far as bad places go in my world. However, growing up, something you should know about me, I've always been an optimistic kind of guy. When I was 14, I read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Well, a few years later, I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, twice. And what I got out of those 2 books are things that I carry with me even to this day. Primarily speaking, positive mental attitude and law of attraction. Everyone here familiar with the law of attraction? If you're not, I'm going to give you an example right now. A few months after my ex-wife moved out, I was driving in the car with my boys, literally telling them about how Dad's got this all figured out. He's not exactly sure how, but I'm going to figure it out. Right then the phone rings. If I was an artist, I'd paint this scene. It's hilarious to me. Phone rings. Hi, this is Keith. On the other side of the phone was a recruiter. She called me up because a mutual friend of ours had introduced me to her and suggested, she offered the question, how would you like to run a staffing agency here in the Lehigh Valley? I said, would I have to travel? She said, no. I said, what staffing agency? Little did this woman know, I knew the owners of the staffing agency. I knew them for years. And the truth of the matter is, for 5 years, they were trying to hire me to run their staffing agency. And because I was stressed, the thought never occurred. And so here I was. Now I had a new job, new bosses, didn't have to travel, I had the boys. Sounds great. I would soon be working 11 and a half hour days. And my boss is what people in HR refer to as not a good match. All right? From there, I started to get stressed. The bills were getting paid, the kids were there, but I thought that I would wind up getting that phone call. It's just not working out, you're fired. The truth of the matter is, being an enterprise software sales rep, certain skill sets just don't transfer. And so I dealt with that, which is my way of sharing with all of you that I don't like what it feels like to be afraid. And what happened was, you know that image of work-life balance where there's a seesaw, right? We work on one side, life on the other. I was life up and work down. At the very same time, I was going out as part of the job, meeting 12 to 20 people a week. This is a high throughput kind of position. I was meeting all sorts of people. I was meeting owners, C-levels, VPs, managers, warehouse staff, everyone, you name it. Millennials and boomers, and everyone in between. And as a good sales guy, I would just try to strike up conversation, try to develop a rapport, and more often than not, I started to notice that we were talking about this thing called work-life balance. And I'm going to get to work-life balance in a little bit, but I thought it was a little bit interesting. Because when I would ask people, everyone here, who's here hasn't heard? Who here has heard of work-life balance? Right, well that makes sense, because most of the people I spoke with knew about work-life balance. And what I found interesting is that according to their definition, work-life balance means that work is getting in the way of your life, and when you put the sum total of the pieces together, you feel anything but balanced. This was an interesting thing to me, because what I started to notice was that this idea, this deep hidden idea that's throughout culture, throughout our society, has you thinking that if you can hold something up like this, you're in a good spot. But this is continuous energy. This is something that if you are a bridge or a body, you are going to eventually strain and stress. And any system over continuous strain and stress will fail, right? And so while all of this was happening, I was talking to very nice, well-intended, hardworking people. But I was also getting up at 4:30 a.m. and I was learning about energy and technology and thousands upon thousands of year-old philosophies like Taoism, Hinduism, and Zen Buddhism. They appreciate compassion, the present moment. And at the very same time, I was learning about modern-day technology, folks, that will blow your mind, like something out in California called the Flow Genome Project, where these two guys, Stephen Collar and Jamie Wheel, are reverse engineering flow state. If you're not familiar with flow is what it feels like when you're in the moment. Athletes say that they're in the zone. Michael Jordan used to say the basketball hoop was this big. You guys feeling me? Right? So they're recognizing, and I talk a lot more about flow with my Lifework Integration program, but what they were doing was helping executives. Today, there are executives throughout the country and the world that are now maximizing their brain's capacity, and they're working 500% more efficiently than their peers, which means they come to work on a Monday and knock out Monday through Friday. And so I mentioned Lifework Integration. Let me share with you what it is that I feel about Lifework Integration. Well, before I do that, what I was really learning was the idea that I can manage my stress, I could appreciate the journey, and that there were scientifically research-backed ways that you can realize, accelerate, and manifest what it is you want to do. So I mentioned the Lifework Integration thing, and it's really, to me, Lifework Integration means that it's the outdated, or it's the upgrade for what is known as work-life balance. Work-life balance is an outdated process, it's an outdated policy. I like the fact that life work, because I feel life is more important than work. And the term integration worked really well for me because I'm a software guy. And I've been doing integrations my whole career, and what I define integration is the free-flowing exchange of energy and ideas between at least two systems. So Lifework Integration is the free-flowing exchange of ideas and energy between your life and your work. Make sense? But since everyone here is familiar with work-life balance, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I do that, I want to tell you about a book called The Finite and Infinite Games. James Carsey, C-A-R-S-E. James Carsey thinks that everybody is playing a game. The entire world is a game, and there are two types of games. There are finite games, and there are infinite games. These games are played completely differently, and they have different rules. An example of a finite game would be chess or baseball. Baseball has 9 innings. The team that scores the most at the end of 9 innings wins the game. There are rules, and the game ends. Excuse me. For the infinite games, 2 examples would be life and business. What is the purpose of playing the game of life? The purpose of playing the game of life is to survive. It's to keep playing. There, as of today, not a single business that exists today was around when business started, and there will not be one single company that exists today in the future, and business will still be there. So business, in of itself, is an infinite game. The game of business is to keep the business moving forward. Make sense? So that if you own a company, and things are going well enough, but you want to make more money, there's really nothing wrong with that. How do you get your employees to work harder and still believe that they're living a good life? So I have a theory that work-life balance started right around this time, and it's the 1970s. What started happening in the 1970s is that business leaders started working with Wall Street and banks. And those companies got together, and what they did is they injected finite rules into the infinite game of business by moving and putting in different start and finish lines. And we all know them as quarterly earning reports. They were not around until the 70s. And so now, so let me put it to you like this, like track. Think of track and field. In track, there are long distance runs and there are short distance runs. Let's just say that you run the mile and you show up for your meet and your coach says, now today you're going to do the quarter mile. And the quarter mile you're going to do 4 times in a row. For those of you that don't know much about track, you will never see an Olympian win the gold medal in the quarter mile and then win in the mile. 2 different races completely, 2 different training methodologies. It's not the same. So in the 1970s, people started sprinting at work 3 months in a row with no break. In America, it got their corporate culture to start chasing numbers faster. And I believe somebody thought, well, if we're going to keep doing this, we got to get our employees to work harder. There's no other way around it. Make sense? So then if you're going to get your employees to work longer days, eventually that's going to get in the way of their life. So it doesn't surprise me, because I saw that work-life balance came from the mid to early 70s, but it doesn't surprise me one bit that somebody might have said, no, you've got it all wrong. It's not that you're working more and your life is disrupted, it's really more like your life depends on your work. There's a balancing act you have to do here. Sometimes you work, sometimes you don't. But the good news is that as long as you do the work, everything will be balanced. So just work hard. And that's what we did, right? And so now, as that's going on, you sit there and you're like, all right, what happens, because we have business with finite rules, what happens when the team plays and loses, but the game keeps going on? See, when you're a member of a team, and every time, whether you're playing sports or in an organization, as you keep losing, or maybe the right way to put it is never really winning, because business is just an ongoing thing, you start to get worn down. You start to become physically stressed, mentally stressed, and before too long, you get frustrated. A natural progressive state would be unhappiness. And when us humans become unhappy, we become disengaged. If you're not sure about this, think of your last relationship and when it ended. You weren't happy first, and then you stopped giving effort. So then, let's fast forward to modern day America, and let's see how this work-life balance experiment has gone. first and foremost, underneath most diseases, bad business decisions, and failed relationships is workplace stress. Workplace stress now is the number one contributor to the all top 10 of the leading causes of death in America. All of our employees are at the lowest level of engagement. This statistic, in case you don't keep up with these statistics, people are disengaged up to 70%. That means 7 out of 10 people inside every organization is like, eh. Okay, so then, they're also the most mentally stressed and physically stressed than they've ever been, and prices are going up, costs are going up. People, more than ever, are dying due to workplace stress. It's becoming a medical condition. So then, if you're trying to get a company to grow, and you work your employees so much that they get sick, injured, or die, how is it at all possible that this makes sense? How has this been going on for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years? It's been going on because the business companies and the organizations out there have been cheating the system. They've been cheating a game. And they've had an endless supply of people that they could keep dumping in. And what we now know is that when given the opportunity, businesses will definitely ignore workplace stress and keep hiring new people at the total and complete expense of their existing people. Right? So an interesting thing happened though a couple of years ago. What started to happen was a massive amount of people that had any sense of skill set left the marketplace. Gone for good. And so now the 800-pound gorilla in the boardroom is, how do we run a company with our projections and our forecasting when we don't have enough people? That's a serious problem. Here's the interesting part. Very few of these companies, small, medium, and large, have absolutely nothing in place to figure this out. Give you a little bit of perspective. I have been a fly on the wall inside of businesses over 1,000 walls. Bless you. And I can say with absolute certainty, very few people know what they're going to do. A little bit of context here. When we look at human resources inside of an organization, historically speaking, and I mean like go back as far as you want, HR is viewed as a cost center. A cost center, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is something that doesn't generate revenue. And if you're the CFO of a company, the thing you want to do is reduce costs and grow revenue. So then, if you do that, how much money do you think CFOs over decades have put into HR? Barely any. However, think of your organizational development people, your sales people, operations people. What they were doing is learning about Six Sigma methodologies. If you're manufacturing, just-in-time inventory management, they were learning, they were getting new systems. Sales people, I mean, we were taught about buyer behavior, market conditions, new software, all that stuff, boom. But HR, historically, was left down the hall, a cost center, to do whatever it is, policies, compliance, whatever, that HR does. 15 years ago or so, HR started talking about how they deserved a seat at the table. So now we're going back to the 06 period, right? So now we have HR moving to the big table. All right, let's see what you got. They all got there, and almost 98% of them, my statistic, not anyone else's, but I'll just do it for today. Most of them had absolutely no experience on how to vet vendors, purchase software, implement software, deploy software, and then what do we do now that we have this software? I'm talking about 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10 companies had no experience with this. So then when the experiment was over, and now they've come back, and now you got CEO, CFO, HR leader. Show us your results. The results were horrible. Most of the implemented software in the United States for the last 15 years never got fully deployed. And it's not HR's fault. They don't know they've never been trained, they've never been told what to do. So then I'll ask you, what does this have to do with your quest to find a company as it relates to today? Right now, as we are here, the value of your human capital is the absolute greatest it's ever been. When I worked at the last company I was at, JobVite, they're the ones that do recruitment marketing software. I thought it would be good to wear this shirt because the theme here is your value is there. So ultimately, when I worked for them, I was given the opportunity in 2018 to put myself out there. I stood up on a stage in about 7 conferences, spoke to thousands of people, and then when I wasn't on the stage, I would be at the table, and I talked to over 1,000 recruiters. And what I can tell you is that none of them are doing what they want. Very, very few of them are. They don't have the software. Who here has ever heard a friend tell the story about how a recruiter never called them back? or maybe, recruiter, here, I'm gonna give my buddy the resume. He's gonna take it and give it to the recruiter. He'll call you in 2 days. Nothing, right? Folks, they're looking for you, but they don't have the tools. They need you, and they can't find you. One of the elements of Lifework Integration is that you wind up learning about compassion and empathy. What I want to do is just have you imagine what it's like being a recruiter. You have little software, you have little budget, you have little training. You're overworked, you're stressed, but the clock is ticking, and they need to fill somebody. They don't even have time, spoiler alert, to say thank you or no thank you to most people that submit, because they simply don't have it. So now I want to change lanes here, and I want to talk to you about something called disruptors. I co-host a podcast called Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization, and my co-host, technically I guess I'm his co-host, but Ira Wolf wrote a book called Recruiting in the Age of Googleization and released it at the end of 2017. In that book, he speaks about disruptors. And one of my key takeaways is that a fundamental component of disruptors is that it comes from an external system and smashes in another system, basically breaking it to pieces. 3 very easy examples for today would be Tesla, Airbnb, and Uber. Tesla didn't come from the car industry any more than Airbnb came from the hotel industry. And Uber had definitely not come from the taxi industry. But what these disruptors did was focus on the needs of individuals so that they could provide them a positive experience. Do you even remember what we talked about before, when we talked about taxis before Uber? The thing we all talked about was how they were blatantly discriminating minorities in major cities and not picking them up. The beauty about disruptors like Uber and a lot of other disruptors is that they truly focus on your experience and try to provide it with dignity and compassion. So then, if we think about, hold on, I lost myself there for a sec. So now, if you think about one of the key elements to business being an infinite game is that they have their own laws. One of the rules of business is that the only true differentiator any company has at all is what? The people working for them. That's it. You could build software, someone else is going to build software that's better. You could build a car, someone else is going to build a car that's better. But it's the people doing the work that's your only differentiator. But so then right now, companies all over the world are trying to put together cultures that are employee-centric because they know that they need their employees to be happier. But who's going to do it? HR? I hope they do, but they're very much out of tune. They don't have any experience to do all the other stuff that's required for them to get to where they need to be to provide an employee-centric environment. What's interesting about this, and this is one of the key messages I hope you take away today, bless you. The definition of work is being completely redefined. Would you be surprised if I told you that in 2019, oh, that's what I wanted to say. By the way, Deloitte, the global consulting firm, in their 2019 Human Capital Trends Report, calls this the social enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, We are entering an entire new world of business, and most companies don't know what they're doing about it. Now, that leads me to the fact that when I was working for JobVite just a couple months ago, would you be surprised if I told you I was working with a multinational company in 46 countries with several thousand employees, and they didn't have recruitment software? Even more entertaining, the senior vice president of HR, SVP HR, had no idea how to sell a business case. And because they don't know how to buy it, and this is coming from empathy, not like I'm a disgruntled sales guy, it comes from empathy, they didn't know how to close the deal. And they never got software. Multinational, 2019, no software. Some companies have software, and it's called an applicant tracking system. An applicant tracking system is going to take the thousands of applications that come in for every one job, because that's kind of what's happening now. And it's going to parse words and keywords, and then it's going to pull something out. Great for administration, sure. But in terms of passion, nope. And the end result is called risk avoidance. If I'm a recruiter, clock's ticking, I got to hire people, and you check enough boxes, you're going through. Hiring manager, boom, check boxes, great. Interview, oh, you're not a jerk, you're hired. If you aren't that good and you fail, they're going to say, hey, it wasn't me, it's a process. See, the thing about recruiting these days is that recruiters are trying to find people, but they have outdated processes. And those outdated processes are cold calling and job boards, and they're based off of a high unemployment society. We're not going to have a high unemployment society for a long while. So now that's their problem. What recruiters are trying to do is create a candidate-centric experience. Now we've got a consumer-centric experience, we have a candidate, an employee-centric experience, and a candidate-centric experience. Please leave here knowing that you are as valuable as you ever can be in your entire professional career. So, what I want you to understand is that the very definition of your work is being redefined. And I got to share a funny story with you. As I was preparing for this presentation, a thought came to my mind that hadn't been there in at least a dozen years. When I was younger and started off in sales, I did a lot of driving. I did a lot of what they call windshield university. Buy CDs and just listen to these talkers and all these different concepts. One such CD had a guy named Zig Ziglar on it. All right? Everybody knows it. He's like the grandfather of feeling good. I don't know, there's just something about him. But what came to my mind out of nowhere was that those who do not prepare to change will wake up one day and find themselves wonderfully prepared in a world that doesn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, you right now have more power in your pocket or your purse than any king that has ever lived in the history of the world. And what I want to do is I want to share with you two different ways that you could start finding the companies that you want to work for as soon as you want to. The first way is to meditate. I want you to sit down in a quiet place. I want you to block out all the external noise. I want you to block out all the internal noise. I want you to think about high frequency emotions like love and compassion. And then I want you to sit there for like as long as you can. And then open your eyes. And there you'll have the perfect employer. So I hope that that happens, but the option 2 might be easier. Pull out your phone. Hey Google, what companies in the Lehigh Valley serve lunch to their employees without charging them? What might happen is that one kernel is going to show up on the path that leads you down to your next chapter in your career. And so now when we talk about engaging that employer, again, redefine the way you work. You know the company, you know their LinkedIn account, you know the recruiter, you know the hiring manager. The redefinition of work suggests that you take matters into your own hands. Get your resume ready. Get a short letter. As much as I adore everyone who tries to help with cover letters, you must show empathy. The only thing anyone ever has time for in any business ever is themselves. I want a short note. You try, do you ever hear the phrase, Sean, help me with this one. I didn't have time to write you a short note, so I wrote you a long one. Thank you, Sean. The truth of the matter is you have to think about the people that you're trying to get in front of. Why not get a resume, a short letter, and a nice little leave behind, like a Snickers bar or an apple? You've got LinkedIn, you know their names, call them up, leave messages. Hi, my name is Keith. I'm just planning to stop by your office next Tuesday around 10 to 10:30. My hope is to introduce you for 5 minutes, get a hello and a handshake, and just leave it at that. I'm looking to get a job, and I thought it might be a good idea. And then you show up. And then maybe they'll come and see you. And maybe they won't. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you're not. Stop being nervous. You ever hear the phrase, think outside of the box? If you stuck around and went to a couple of my Lifework Integration programs, you would realize that there is no box. And if you think there is, you put it there. Now is not the time to worry about how you feel. You should feel more excited versus anxious. So now, to just give it a little perspective, more than a couple of years ago, I was working, my territory in sales was here in the Lehigh Valley. So I called up one of the largest employers in the Lehigh Valley, which is my way of saying that you all know who they are. I said, hi, my name is Keith. I wanted to just drop some information off for you. Hopefully I'll see you in the lobby. I have done this over 1,000 times in my career, folks. So don't worry about not getting an answer, because you never really do get an answer. But that day, when I showed up, someone came down. That day started a process that ended in a $353,000 sale. It works. So then, as you can tell, I'm a little bit into living like my life and work are integrated, right? And to get here, I had to do a whole lot of thinking. I had to ask myself a lot of questions. And then when I came up with the answers, I sat with them. Some of them I don't like so much. But I kept going. And then when my company let me go on May 1st, the truth of the story is I didn't feel like I was being let down. I felt like I was being let go. And I could go full speed in the direction that I wanted to do. I wanted to go in. And so what I want to share with you is that the technology that is available for me is on every table in this room, in every pocket where there's a phone. You have the opportunity to do this. If you want to do something like live a life you feel is worth living, regardless of where you start, regardless of where you want to go, I could use some volunteers for a little bit of an experiment. And I'm going to give you 2 questions to think about. Think about it. Come up with the answers. And when you feel comfortable about it, maybe share them with, well, me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Or you can talk to people that you know, love, and trust. The first question is, what do I want? This is a bit of a doozy. I promise you not everybody knows what they want. Just as much as most people aren't prepared as an organization, I got this sneaky suspicion that most people truly don't know what they want in their lives. To help you get to that, my recommendation is take the first answer you give and then follow it up with the question why 5 times. What do I want? I want to have lots of money. Why? So I can do what I want. Why? When you get to 5, you're going to have a very interesting new idea. You're going to find what it is that you truly want, or you'll be as close as you ever got to it. Don't be surprised if you can't get there. It's not an easy question to ask. It might bring you to a place that you don't know you want to be at. My advice to you is take it easy. Put it down. Go clear your mind, free your headspace, and enjoy the rest of the day. And then when you come back, question number 2 is, what is it that I don't want? It's an interesting element, again, something I talk about in my Lifework Integration program, is that most people don't have a clue about what they truly want, but boy, can they write volumes of books about what it is they don't want. So we talk about that. How, in fact, did we get here? And the truth of the matter is we got here by way of habits. We got here by way of misleading guidance, and for no one's fault other than the fact that we're all playing a game the wrong way. My message to you is that now is the time for you to shine. You've got the resumes, you've got the tools, make it happen. I'm thrilled that you let me come here today. I appreciate your time. thank you, and if there are any questions, let me have it. No?
Question? Oh, sorry. Go right ahead.
Start us off.
So, you talked about a book, Recruiting in the Age of
Googleization.
Googlization.
He also wrote Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization, which is the name of the podcast. And it's about the future of work, by the way. Whole bunch of thought leaders. Jim?
Keith, could you share with us some of the reactions you get from top executives like the CEO when you talk to them about Lifework Integration and what they're thinking now?
Yep. They're thinking that this is a great idea, that they don't know how to do it. And my whole angle is, well, don't worry about your HR people. I'm here. It's called outsourcing, which, by the way, reflects the gig economy that we exist in today. The gig economy is this huge movement for you working 5 hours a week here, 10 hours a week there. That's going on. The box is breaking. Systems are falling apart because of all these disruptors. Ever hear of Bitcoin or blockchain? Folks, outside these walls, crazy shit's happening. Be a part of it. So they're looking for it, but they don't know where to find it because they're busy. And candidly, just like every good idea that requires change, it takes several conversations, but each one they get more fired up. And then I start thinking I should charge them for individual coaching. Well, Sean.
Where can I learn more about Lifework Integration?
KeithCampagna.com. Sign up. There's a little spot for it. Folks, I just started this May 1st. It took me a month to get all these ideas out of my head. So there's stuff happening. I think I have a venue. I think I'm going to start doing like once a month kind of things where you sign up for the program. We walk you through a process. And that process, for the sake of conversation, is talking about why it is that you don't know what you want, helping you figure out what you don't want, which naturally moves you into what it is you do want. And then what we're going to do along the way is increase your self-awareness, your ability to be happy, and develop new habits. So that's the overview.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, but I also want to add in, I don't spell well. Can you spell your last name so I can get that right?
Campagna.
Great. So just your website, is there any other resources that you have at this time? Can we also find you on LinkedIn that one?
You bet you can. Yep. Yeah, just Keith Campagna on LinkedIn. Or if somebody here might know the trick where you just like push the button and everybody that's in the room gets connected. But we'll connect before I leave. Laura?
Can I just add something to my landing speech that backs up what you said? Since I lost my job in April, I went on a lot of interviews for jobs I didn't really want. And it showed. I didn't get those jobs. Then the job I really wanted, I was surprised how calm I was when I went there and how well I spoke and how good it felt. I didn't go through the 5 whys like he said to do, which is a great idea, but I knew. And that's when it happened. Please let me stay there for a long time.
Now I got to keep it, right?
That's right.
Comment. I agree with you that most companies don't have a clue about any of this, but I have worked for a company which I feel so blessed for having worked for them because they were truly employee oriented. I went to work every day at 6:30 in the morning. I'd leave my office. I'd leave at 6:30 in the evening. You know what? At the end of the day, it's time to go home already. I wasn't work. It was a pleasure because of the corporate culture, and it came right from the owner all the way down to the floor sweeper.
It has to.
A lot of companies, they think about a bonus at the end of the year. Not that company. They did a bonus every single quarter. If you made your numbers, you got the bonus. If you didn't make your numbers, you didn't get it, but you knew you'd get it the next quarter. What that did was it reinforced why you were working hard for the company. That was the owner's philosophy. when the owner sold the company, unfortunately, he gave away to the employees of his way of saying thank you, $30 million, and he didn't have to give a dime. He said, you made me what I am today. That is the kind of person you want to work for.
Sure. And a lot of what I talk about, I say how most companies, right? Most HR groups, most recruiters, not all. 80-20 rule applies here. 20% of the companies out there, hopefully, more like 10, are doing it the right way. And this is what I tell senior executives. I was on the phone yesterday. I asked them, I go, how are you going to at all get good talent if you're not getting the good talent? If you don't have anything in place to do it? And do you understand the amount of work that's required to change a culture?
Big time.
I mean, that's why I want to stress to you, YouTube, instead of, try this. Again, I want to redefine your work here because it's being redefined everywhere. How's this for work? Next week, all the time you think you should be spending watching the news, don't. YouTube, thoughts and ideas that come from what it is that you think you want. Literally, go to YouTube and say, how do I become a magician? If that's what you want. You will be amazed with how easy it is to find out somebody else who did it or somebody else's idea about doing it. Any other questions? Yes, sir, back there.
Go ahead.
Okay. We all here trying to network and try to get face time with recruiters. It's not that easy. People are getting those systems in place which read the resume and pass it on and which checks the box. What are the key purposes and what are the boxes that we need to check?
How long is a piece of string? Until you see it in front of you, you won't know. Everybody's doing it different. It has to do with what industry do you want to get in on?
Education.
Education on what kind of level? IT?
Management.
Management?
Okay.
You want to manage education?
In university, basically support for the teachers.
Okay. So I don't know the answer because I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
But they're doing it. And you know, Gary might know. Where'd Gary go? Gary with the
He
cowboy
said
hat.
he had really-
Yeah, he does LinkedIn. Hey Google, what are the keywords that recruiters in the higher education industry, guys, ladies, I'm giving you the answer. Just talk to your hand. Put the news down. Put the news down. Go to your own phone. Use it as a tool. Hey, we invented fire. We didn't burn the village down. We invented guns. We didn't shoot each other. Technology is something that a lot of people are afraid of, and I wonder how many people are actually using it as the amazing tool that it is. I don't have the answer. Google or Siri probably does.
Any thoughts on where you get to the point where maybe you have an abundance of opportunities and more there's in the process being manifested to find the right one, like whether you should take the one that's being offered now or you should wait for one that could happen, and maybe, or if you have more than one option, any ideas on how to figure out what's the best fit for you?
The short answer is just do it. Stop thinking about it and feel it. To put it in perspective, because I'm a software guy, I got laid off May 1st. I had two big things on my mind. First and foremost, I had the podcast, but that doesn't make me any money, but it was at least something to someone's point earlier. I think it was Paul, if you keep doing things while you're in transition, you keep momentum moving forward in the right direction. So I got the podcast doing that. But because I know how much HR sucks at buying software, I worked with a company. I literally called up a CEO and said, I've used your product before. I think you could apply it in this way. And he was like, that sounds great. Would you like to be my business partner? Sure. So I literally wrote and developed software that we finished yesterday, 2 months, 3 months. And I'm doing Lifework Integration. Dude, do I know how this is going to turn out? I have no idea. Lifework Integration program, we talk about chaos theory. And we talk about people's desire to control things that they simply cannot do, and how to get all wrapped around the axle. So my answer to you is, find the things that you really feel that you want to do, and start putting in habits to chop off the things that get in the way of that. Back to Jim.
General question, one of the things is people who are in job transition we struggle with is, you do want to learn about a company's culture and understand if there's a fit. what I find is a lot of times you really don't get great insight into the culture until you're in there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice about, as somebody who's in job transition, maybe some tips
Sure.
about how do you identify good culture, bad culture, and things of that nature as you talk to companies?
Certainly start at Glassdoor. Glassdoor, I actually know the former chief revenue officer of Glassdoor. And while he was there, they transitioned from this vanity type concept to like a legitimate player in employee culture identification. So if you're not familiar with Glassdoor, that's what they do. People that either work there and or don't work there anymore will go on and put out reports. And I think you could sign up for it. I don't know if it costs any money, but you could get like a decent amount of reviews prior.
Doesn't cost them.
Yeah. So again, technology is a tool.
Yeah, I'd say one of the problems with culture is it's sort of a two-edged sword. They have a culture, but so do you.
Yeah.
And although you may find your culture, do you really know your own? And when Paul left his last opportunity, we all had, the whole gang of us had breakfast one morning to console him. And we all had our stories of crummy companies that we got into very innocently. I mean, mine was on this best companies to work for. It just wasn't me. I didn't belong there. And I won't go into any more than that, but so it's a two-edged sword. There's their culture and you. And do you match?
And the philosophy, again, something that Jim brought up. What senior level executives are starting to come to terms with is that we have ignored philosophy in the business world for decades, maybe even longer. And philosophy is now coming back. And so a lot of these up and coming leaders bring philosophical values that have endured over time with them. And so one of the elements I want to share with you is the idea of don't get down on yourself. Please, go easy. Self-love is probably one of the most underrated skill sets that everyone has. Based off of the idea, and Laura said it, this isn't rehearsed, the job that you got that you didn't like, would you have changed that at all, knowing where you are today?
No, because it got me here.
Because it gets you there. It's all a step in the right direction. My challenge to you is to feel your way through it. What do I want to do? It's like the most valuable thing that people are struggling with.
Other comments or questions? I have one last. I'm sorry.
Clarification, on the Deloitte, spending the weekend with the Deloitte VP, you brought that up. Was it,
The 2019 Human Capital Trends Report. It's free. I mean, it's like if you're in transition, it's like a bad playwright, but the truth of the matter is that they will they'll make it. By the time you're done reading the trend report, you'll feel incredible. Like, wait a minute, what am I worried about these people for? I have my life to live. And then you start acting and thinking differently. That might be good for you. Yes, sir.
Just one last question. You've mentioned a lot about disruptive technologies. Every industry is experiencing. I mean, all the way from, I spent a lot of years in the utility industry when coal was king and nuclear was wonderful. Now it's all solar and wind.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so how can, and obviously if we knew what they were, we'd go out and invent them and become billionaires.
Right.
But how can we, with that lack of knowledge, prepare for disruption?
Okay, so.
And I think you've answered that to a certain extent.
Well, no, that's a good question. The short answer is you really can't. That's what disruption is. It's like an accident. My father and I, when I was learning how to drive, he'd always drive slow, and he would say that I'm expecting a tree to fall across the street so that if it does, I could stop in time. And I, being the teenager, would say, well, why don't you drive faster, and then when it falls, you're ahead of it. Right? So you really can't plan for an accident any more than you can really plan for a disruptor. But again, and please take this like, don't kill the messenger and take it from the heart here. It's stop watching the goddamn news. Start learning about what you want to do. If you really want to see what kind of disruption is coming on, hey Google, what are the top 5 disruptors in whatever industry? And down the rabbit hole you'll go. And now you're learning. And believe me when I tell you, part of the things that's going on with new technology is what's called energy psychology. Again, another very real thing that I talk about during Lifework Integration. They now have the technology to drive all the way down to what are called microtubulars, that are the little things on top of little cells inside your body, my body, everyone's body. And they're recognizing that everything has to do with energy, frequency, and vibration. How you feel is exactly what got you to where you are. So then you can feel your way to a better place. Stay away from the stuff that doesn't feel good. I haven't watched, by the way, I keep saying that because for the record, I hope this doesn't draw any lines between any of us, me and any of you. I haven't watched the news since 2011. My kids are healthy. I'm starting 2 businesses without losing my mind yet. I'm having fun. It's not that bad. And nothing crazy is happening. Just putting it out there. Start here on how you feel. Politics are over there. Wars everywhere, but not here. This is my goal for Lifework Integration. If I could get you to feel bulletproof from here to here, then the rest of it becomes easy. Sir?
Yeah, part of the whole thing is that disruption, in a sense, really isn't even disruption. It's just normal.
Change is everywhere. Change is life.
Change is a normal thing. In
Yep.
fact, it is, time is simply the measure of change. It's absolutely normal. Henry Ford was a disruptor.
Yeah.
The railroad was a disruptor of canals. Anybody think about all the canals we used to have around here?
Sure.
Okay, and canals disrupted stagecoaches, and everything disrupts everything else in a sense. It's just a matter of moving forward. I'm sure the wheel disrupted somebody.
And I think you hit it, that we've got to be acceptance of change.
Yeah.
I mean, not being political, but we're not going to go back and mine coal anymore.
No,
It's just not gonna happen.
Anybody who told people in Pittsburgh to go back to steel, they would ride them out of town on a rail, tarred and feathered.
But the point being is, besides being acceptance of change, is, and one of the things that a number of people have thrown out is the idea of lifelong learning.
Yeah, absolutely. If you keep changing, nothing is really disrupted.
That can
You're just
constantly
moving along with the
read
flow.
and
By the way, that's
constantly
Taoism.
learn on a broad basis. Maybe take a course.
Yeah.
Maybe get a certification. And by doing and learning enough that when disruption happens, maybe there's a good chance you'll be there.
Well, you're gonna
said all
you're
you
gonna
need
be
to keep up with is right here in the palm of your
right
hand.
there. $29.99 a month.
Yeah.
I hope so, right? Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.